What's going on, guys? Stefan back with you, S&E's Garage. Today we're here again with this 2009 Honda Accord. In my last video on this car, you will have seen that the right rear caliper locked up and essentially ate the pads on that side, damaged the rotor, and it's at a point now where it needs new pads and rotors in the back. I talked to my buddy Mike, and he told me to go ahead and order the parts. So what we have here are left and right rear calipers. These are Rotors brake parts. I use them often. They specialize in brake parts. I've had nothing but good results with them. We have two new Rotors coated rotors. We do live in the Salt Belt here in New Jersey, so anytime I replace brakes, I always tend to get the coated rotors because they do last a little bit longer. They don't rust as quickly. And then we have Rotors brake pads. These are hybrid brake pads, so they're basically ceramic, just a little bit different. So they'll be nice and quiet. They'll have low brake dust, and I think they'll do very nicely on this Honda Accord. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come back here, and while we still have our rotors on, while we still have our calipers on, we're going to go ahead and take these two Phillips head set screws out of this rotor. All that they are put there for is during the assembly process. They put them there to keep the rotors from falling off of the hubs. So I've already gone ahead and loosened these up. So we're going to take these off. We're going to set them aside. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I don't need to record me doing that twice. And then we're going to go ahead and pull these. I want to say they're 14mm bolts out of the brake caliper here. That they bolt the caliper to the caliper bridge. And we're going to get them out and start taking this caliper apart. This caliper does have the parking brake and or emergency brake built in. So if you are going to reuse your calipers, you're going to need a special tool to compress them because they need to spin in. You can't just simply press them in. Luckily for me, I'm going to be replacing these calipers, so I don't need that tool. I have it, but I'm not going to need to break it out. So let's get started. All right, guys. So before I break the two 14s that hold the caliper on loose, what I'm going to do here, these are needle nose vice grips, and what I use these for is I'll very lightly put them on this brake hose here, like so, and what that's going to do is prevent brake fluid from pouring out of this brake line when I break this loose, because it's going to be a lot easier for me to take this banjo bolt out of the caliper with the caliper still bolted in. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to get this out, and we're going to move this aside. That way the brake line's out of the way, the brake line's disconnected from this caliper, and when we remove the caliper, we can just get it out of our way. This banjo bolt right here is a 12mm. We're just going to put our weight on it and break it loose. So now that it's broken loose, I'm going to take my drain pan and I'm going to stick it right under the caliper, and I'm going to take it off the rest of the way. And you'll see that with my vice grips on there, we're not going to have a whole lot of brake fluid leaking from here, which is a good thing. Just like that. Now you're going to put this banjo bolt aside. The new caliper is going to come with new copper washers, so you just have to, whether you need, a screwdriver, a pair of pliers, or whatever, we're going to have to get this other copper washer off of this. I'll worry about that later. I'm going to put it aside for right now. And next, we're going to take off the 12mm bolt that holds the emergency brake cable to the caliper. I believe it's a 12mm. I might be wrong, but we're going to check on that, and I'll let you know exactly what it is. Let me just take this off of here real quick, and I will show it to you. I've already gone ahead and sprayed it with PB Blaster, so that's something you're also going to want to do. It is back here. If you find the emergency brake cable right here, you'll see the bolt head, the back of the bolt there. So the front of it is going to be down here, right there. You'll see it. So we got to get that off. That looks like a 12 also. We're going to get that off. That way when we pull off the caliper, we can get that as well. So we got the bolt out for the parking brake cable. That was this guy right here. And we went ahead and slipped the parking brake cable out of its channel. This light should come on in just a minute. If not, I'm sorry. But this is it right here. It's out of its channel. There we go. So that's freed. So now we can actually go ahead and take these two 14mm bolts off and get this caliper out of the way. Alright guys, so we got this caliper off. Right now the only thing holding it on is this parking brake cable. You can see the clip. So what we have to do is spray this with a little bit here with some PB, loosen it up, and we have to get this hook to come off of the brake cable like that. So now the caliper is freed, it's off, so we can go ahead and drain the rest of this caliper if there's even anything left in it. And this caliper is now off, so now we can focus on the caliper bracket. It looks like they're going to be two 17mm bolts. So we're going to get this brake hose like this out of the way, and we're going to go ahead and get these two 17s off. We're not reusing any of this, so I'm not even going to bother taking these pads out. I might need these return springs actually, so we'll put them aside just in case. But we're going to go ahead and get this caliper bracket off now. Like I said, that's going to be two 17mm bolts. They're back here. There's one here where my finger is, and there's one here. If I stick you in there, you'll see them, one there and one there. Let's get that caliper bracket off. Alright guys, now that we got our caliper off, we're going to go ahead and get this rotor off. If you don't live in the salt belt, yours will probably come right off. This one's going to need a little bit of persuasion here. There we go, hit it a couple times, she'll come right off. So now we're going to go ahead, we're going to unbox these new rotors. We're going to compare them to the old one, make sure they're the same, and we're going to go ahead and start putting them back together. Alright guys, we got our fresh new rotor on and our two set screws in to hold the rotor in place. Now we're going to go ahead and get the left rear caliper. When you're doing your rear calipers, they are directional. The bleeder is going to be on the top. That's where you want the bleeder. If the bleeder is on the bottom, you're never going to get all the air out of it. So make sure you put the right one on the right side. I'm going to go get that left rear caliper. We're going to put the bracket on, get the caliper on, put the line on, and we'll be back with you. Alright guys, we got the shiny new caliper bracket on with our two 17mm bolts. Like I showed you, there's one here and one here. We're going to go ahead and get our brake pads, and I'm going to show you the correct way to install them, because believe it or not, there is a right and wrong way to do this. So let me go get them. Alright guys, so now that I got these pads out, one thing you're going to notice here is two of these pads have what's called a Telltale Tab. That's going to be these guys right here, these little tabs. Here's one, and here's two. And then these two do not. So the two that do not are going to go on the outboard side of the rotor. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, I'm going to turn you this way a little bit here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to take my purple silicone brake lube here. Alright, and I'm going to lube up where these pads sit in the hardware, and that is the only place that I'm going to lube them. And then I'm going to simply slide them in place like so. Okay, so they are in. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. You want the tab on the leading edge of the rotor. So when the rotor spins like this, when you're going forward, it's going to spin that way. You want that tab to hit first. So you want this on this particular car facing down towards the road. So we're also going to do the same thing here. We're going to use our brake lube, and we are just lubing where the slides go. I've seen some people lube the whole back of this pad. That's not necessary. This right here is the vibration damper. This is what prevents squealing. Putting grease here will do absolutely nothing but make a mess. So we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to slide this pad into place, and now you'll see these pads move nice and freely. They are not hung up. And then we are going to reuse these return springs that I told you I was going to set aside, because they are good to have. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to put these in, and now we are ready to put the caliper on, which is right here. So the first thing you need to do here is figure out how this is going to sit. So this goes here like this. So what we need to do is put this clip for the parking brake on. So now that that's on, we can go ahead push these slide pins in, and we can go ahead and get our shiny new caliper bolts. Alright, and we can tighten our calipers. Now, like I said, the bleeder on this is going to be up top. That's exactly where you want your bleeder. If you have the bleeder down here, you have the wrong caliper, and you're never going to be able to get the air out of it. So let's go ahead and get these two 14mm bolts tightened, and then we can go ahead and put our brake hose on, and we can put our emergency brake cable and bolt that back into place. Alright guys, we got our emergency cable bolted back into our new caliper, so the emergency brake is connected. Now we're going to go ahead and pull this plug out and get the banjo bolt ready to go back in. We got to take that crush washer I was showing you off first though. So let's get this bolt here. We're going to get a pair of pliers and we're going to pull that crush washer off. Alright guys, we pulled that plug out. We got our old crush washer off and our new one on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our banjo here. It's going to go like this. One new crush washer is going to go on this side. The other one is going to go on this side. Never reuse these, always replace them. You're going to line the bolt up and you're going to snug this. You don't want to kill it, 12mm, but you do want to tighten it enough to where these crush washers crushed. So I'm going to leave it like that. That should be good. I'm going to open my needle nose vice grips, and I'm going to go ahead and open this bleeder. And what I'm going to do is let these brakes gravity bleed for a few minutes. So I'm basically going to open the bleeder, and I'm going to let the brake fluid from the reservoir flow down into the lines and down into the caliper. Now, because I have the back of this car jacked up, it might not gravity bleed very well. I just want to see if it works. If not, I'm going to have to get a helper here and we're going to have to power bleed these. So let me get the right size wrench on here. I'm pretty sure it's either a 10 or an 11 because the 12 don't fit, and we'll crack that loose. Alright guys, so I opened this bleeder, nothing came out. Like I said, the car is jacked up to a point where the master cylinder is at a lower spot than this caliper is, so that's not going to work. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is come over to this other side, and we're going to start getting this side apart. This is the side that is actually seized, so I am going to have to pry this caliper off with a pry bar. So the first thing I'm going to do exactly what I did on the other side. I'm going to clamp this hose off, I'm going to take this line off, and then I'm going to go ahead and loosen the bolt and remove the bolt that holds the parking brake cable into place. Alright guys, so we got this caliper off. We're going to work on the caliper bracket again. Like I told you last time, it's two 17mm. This is basically going to be lather, rinse, repeat. We're doing the same thing on this side as we did to the other. Alright guys, caliper bracket's off, rotor's off. We're going to get the new rotor, stick it on, put our new caliper bracket on, and our pads. Alright guys, we got our caliper bracket on. We got our Telltale Tab facing the bottom like I showed you. And we got our happy helper Mike here to help me bleed these brakes when I'm done. So let's go ahead, let's get this caliper on, hook up our brake hose, hook up our emergency brake cable, and let's bleed them. Alright guys, so we're at the point now where we're bleeding these brakes. We already did the passenger side. You want to start with the side that's furthest away from the master cylinder, which in this case was the passenger side. So now we got our good buddy Michael in the driver's seat. And what we're going to have him do is pump the pedal up 3 times and hold it. When he tells me that he's holding, we're going to crack this bleeder loose, and you're going to see a mixture of air and brake fluid come out of this hose. And we're going to do that until we have nothing but fluid coming out. So whenever you're ready, Mike. Closed. Sounds better already. Closed. It's very important that you communicate with each other while you're doing this. Thank you. Because if you open this while he's still pumping, you can actually suck air into the system, and you don't want to do that. It's closed, Mike. Pump it up. How's the pedal feel? All right, we're gonna do it a couple more times. Yeah, I still got some air coming out. All right, go ahead. I'm closed. All right, let's go one more. All right, tell me how that pedal is. All right, guys, thank you for watching S&E's Garage. We basically just did a complete rear brake job on this, and we replaced both calipers. So please, if you enjoy the video, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.